Okay, so the title of this session is very much how is Botswana positioning itself as a gateway for the Southern African region. So we are talking about how attractive it is essentially as a destination for foreign investment in particular, and what would make it a good as a financial hub for that region. So in fact, let me just ask that direct question from your different perspectives, because you do have different perspectives, obviously. You're the African Tourism Board, so you're looking at it probably actually from a quite holistic kind of view, I guess you are. And Ken, obviously, when we talked yesterday, you are perhaps looking at it much more from the point of view of what makes it somewhere viable to invest in. So let's start actually, because seeing as this really is first of all about Botswana. So Tafa, if you're there, can you tell me what you think are the main competitive advantages of Botswana as a hub, financial hub, for the Southern African region? If he's not there, he's not there. Okay, fine. In that case, if you don't mind, I'll throw it over to you.
Yes, thank you so much. Let me take this opportunity to convey my gratitude to Dr. Taleb, who has been very instrumental, especially within the travel sector, with the backbone of driving Africa, bringing it to the global space. Yes, let me regress a little bit, yes, before I touch on Botswana. Africa, I strongly believe, as Minister Bartlett has indicated, that it is going to be one of the strongest hubs within the global space, both in terms of investment and also in terms of tourism. Passionate as we are to say how do we regroup as the African continent so that we can start to appreciate what we have and start to appreciate what we can be in the next few decades. Yes, as African Tourism Board, our task and our advocacy is to say, how do we work together as a continent? I think the COVID period lockdowns has taught us a big lesson. Say, look, let us start to appreciate and look within so that we capitalize on our domestic, we capitalize on our regional and on our continental space, so that let's have our international traffic flow to come to Africa as a complementary. But the first and the onus is up to us as Africans to say, how do we start working on our backyard? Yes, Botswana. Botswana is one of the magic places of Africa. We had an opportunity, a few months ago, where the government was actually celebrating the Kawa June Challenge Cultural Festival. For the first time, it was held in a desert, where we actually had an opportunity of hosting about 8,000 local participants. That was tourism at its best, where cabinet ministers, including the president himself, they came, they laid, a city of tents to say, here we are proudly Botswanas celebrating our diversity in terms of dance and music. These are some of the opportunities that prevail in that beautiful country. And we have always said it is time for us to sing our new song, a new song as Africans in Africa, so that such should be your highlights, your news releases within the global space. But it's unfortunate that our stories and our songs has been told by somebody who does not have an experience and who does not appreciate what Africa has. So Botswana is a destination in terms of visitors and in terms of investment as well, and also with its stability. because when you look at investment, the first thing you need to realize, consider, is the stability.
Yeah.
And we really appreciate that even their currency, one of the strongest currencies in Africa, and it has been maintained for decades. That reflects the seriousness of the government, and that also reflects the maturity of the government. Say, how do we really look within and see how best we can build our own economy for our own populace? So I would really encourage all of us here, and I know that ITIC will be hosting a conference in Botswana, and maybe I might take my privileged seat here to say, colleagues, it is time for us to come and explore, come and enjoy the diversity, and come and enjoy, by the way, during the Kawa festival, I'm a vegetarian, but the way they cook their meat, the minister actually drove me to a point where I tasted that organic meat is the best meat in Africa and in the world. So yes, Botswana is the destination and a hub in terms of tourism in
Are you
Africa.
vegetarian on health grounds? Or
No, I decided to.
Yeah, exactly. And what the point you made about the economy, yes, absolutely. This was a country that came from being really quite poor, with one of the lowest per capita GDPs in the world, to actually being a middle income, relatively prosperous country, which is an amazing, amazing feat. Okay, well, in the absence of Tafa, I'm going to go to, please tell me when he's arrived. Let's look at the other side of the coin. What are the tick boxes, if you like, that you need, or your investors might need, when they look at someone like Botswana? Tafa has mentioned a few already. We talked about stable economy. What about the other aspects? When you analyse Botswana, what's good about it, and what could change? What could be better?
Well, thank you. I think you stole a bit of the thunder when you mentioned that Botswana has the largest herd of elephants. I think something like 60 or 70,000 herds, population of elephants. But I think from an investor's perspective, as you invest in a country, you want to look at the macro. Stability, strong policy environment. In other words, is there an enabling environment for capital to flow? Secondly, if one were a foreign investor, is there going to be a likelihood of being able to repatriate investment? So Botswana, I think, scores very highly on free flow of capital, makes it a very welcome home for capital for investment purposes. Another important aspect is there strong local investment capability. So Botswana actually has, on a per capita basis, very, very high levels of pension fund coming from employee savings, government employees. So even though it's got a relatively small population base.
It has got a small population.
Yes.
That's true. Yeah.
But it has a strong asset base for local investment, which actually should be tapped into as part of because tourism investments have to be long-term by definition. And that's the other reason why you need policy certainty. Because as an investor in the hospitality, you don't want to come in and every 2-3 years, having put money into an asset, not knowing whether it's going to be policy environments are going to be maintained. The other area is Botswana actually has good tourism assets. That will not go away. I mean, the 70,000 herds of elephants are protected. So thankfully, I mean, with, let's say, every elephant having one offspring, with a lifespan north of 30 years, the likelihood that the tourism assets will continue. It's also blessed with a very unique ecosystem, a mix of desert, the Okavango plains, the delta, the movement of water. It's obviously very sensitive to environmental impacts, but it has kind of the characteristics of a strong ecosystem for tourism. It's also linked to other countries that are nearby. So if you look at the Chobe area, a previous strip links 5 countries. So there's a huge ecosystem of tourism that I think really supports Botswana. And if all of that could be tapped into a regional tourism product,
right,
it could make it a really...
And that is interesting. That relates to what you were just saying. So we're talking about for example, Botswana not competing with, say, Uganda or Kenya, which also have, and Rwanda, which have fantastic tourism, like wildlife, and all those things you were saying. There should be a route, if you like, a connection.
As you was indicating the Chobe, maybe just an experience I had. Dr. Taleb, I think you love to hear this. Where you are taken on a boat, especially along the Caprivi, right, when going to Chobe National Park, which is one of the biggest parks in Botswana, and you are afforded an opportunity of having these big 5 elephants swimming just closer to you. It's so amazing when you are so much connected to nature. So I believe that Botswana has so much to offer, and it hasn't been that much exposed, right, in terms of really attracting the local populace, in terms of regional and in terms of continental. That's why our emphasis is to say we need to start appreciating your domestic populace so that they really come and appreciate and explore these great opportunities that we have. I think the onus is up to us as Africa to start appreciating ourselves. Yes, and then imagine if all our citizens would be part of the value chain. They then become brand ambassadors in selling to exterior market segment. So we really appreciate and we want to invite you to come and explore and see for yourself, especially within the investment space. We have so much opportunities, and we have experienced now a flow in terms of your conferences now. They are hosting quite a lot of mega conferences, which is a bonus and an added advantage towards our sustainability and also towards the recovery of our beautiful sector, which is the tourism sector.
Just in terms, and you touched on this earlier, Ken, but in terms of compliance with international norms, how does Botswana rate in that sense?
Well, I think probably one of the strongest areas is with respect to protection of wildlife.
Yeah.
And so Botswana is I think a member of the CITES treaty, which basically protects wildlife, which is one of the things that has benefited Botswana in terms of the herds of elephants.
Yeah.
You know, so much so that the parts of the country where wildlife is really protected. Also, Botswana benefits from being a relatively low population country with a very large expanse of land. But that notwithstanding, I think Botswana scores very high in terms of compliance and adherence to international treaties on the protection of wildlife.
And what about financially as well?
Financially, it's I think it's regarded as really sort of best in class in terms of governance and financial centers, adherence to international requirements such as FICA, which deals with anti-terrorism and anti-money laundering, movement of capital. So Botswana also has an international financial services center, which makes it a very stable environment. The other thing I mentioned previously was the pension capital.
Yeah.
And perhaps, I think a few things that could be done to create greater awareness of Botswana as a very stable, financially stable economic environment, and also sort of a magnet for capital into the continent.
There is one, I would call it a weakness, which you can probably talk about, which is air connectivity. When is that going to be sorted out? Because that will surely help. If you can go from one country to another within Africa without having to go via Europe, which quite often happens. When are they going to sort that? Because they have had agreements recently, haven't they? But when they're going to come to effect?
Look, this is not Botswana's challenges. No. Yes, look, the whole continent of Africa, we really have challenges when it comes to connectivity. And remember, I hasten to say that previously, tourism was actually created for a certain segment of the market with the exclusion of your local populace. That is why it is extremely expensive just to fly from Botswana to South Africa. And in comparison with somebody who's flying from South Africa to UK, these are the challenges and the hurdles we are facing. And we are saying what is important is for the private and public sector to have a synergy and see how best they can come on board. And really, we have those challenges that needs to be addressed so that goes beyond even the visa issues. I mean, it's just a hurdle. And we are so excited now that just received the breaking news that Kenya has actually lifted some of these visa regimes, right, which we really appreciate. And we are really putting pressure to some of the member states to emulate some of these good policies that will then enable us as we are coming from these recovery processes of our tourism sector. We cannot preach to say, look, intra-African trade is open to each and every member state, but we haven't created mechanisms that will enable us to be able to travel from one end to another. So we need to make sure that we put more pressure to say, it cannot be the status quo. Let us go back to the drawing board. And I know most of the member states, they are looking at the profit margins. But when you look at the volumes that will be created by this accessibility, I mean, we will end up being really one of the powerhouse of the world. So we need to work together, synergize, coordination, and make sure that we enable these processes.
Okay. I'm delighted that I think Tafa has joined us. Hello, can you hear us?
Hi.
Can we turn his sound up? Just try
Hi,
talking
can you
again,
hear me?
please. No, can't hear. Can we sort this out technically, by any chance? Sorry, Tafa, you haven't got the mute button on, have you, by any chance?
No. It's on.
No. How's it going there? Explain to me what the problem
What's
is,
on?
please.
Can you hear me?
Sorry, Tafa, we're just trying to get hold of you.
All right, can you hear me?
Tafa, try speaking, please.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Finally. Am I still audible? Hi, Rajan, am I still audible? Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Good, great, okay. Now, you weren't there at the beginning of the discussion, so I want to give you the chance, I said the only person on this panel actually is from Botswana, to actually tell us what you think are the competitive advantages of Botswana for incoming tourism within the, well actually within the whole of Africa, but particularly within the southern African region.
Well, first of all, at least, one could say that Botswana is land-linked, as opposed to what people normally say is landlocked. Therefore, we've got this opportunity of connecting with the whole of the southern region within an hour from most of our tourism destinations. That gives us an advantage of, what we have been vouching for, which is, collaboration, connectivity with other attractions within the region in order to increase the number of tourists that are coming to the region. So basically, this connectivity allows us to then form or advocate for, collaborative policy reforms and so on, so that we ensure that we increase the tourism reach, or we increase the tourism opportunities that we can leverage on, not only within the country, but also with our neighboring countries. Botswana basically has quite an array of products that we can offer. Untapped wilderness areas, untapped and undeveloped cultural products culture and heritage products that we can actually leverage on. So there's a number of opportunities that we have that we can develop, and we can link with other activities within the region. Botswana has taken up an active role in terms of, you know, environmental protection, as well as trying to develop tourism by way of, you know, we reserved about 39% of our country for tourism and for conservation. That's quite a big commitment that comes from the government in terms of trying to ensure that, you know, we keep our heritage, we keep our areas pristine, we keep the tourism opportunities for the later generation to continue with generation of revenue from tourism, from all this land that has been allocated for tourism investment, as well as for preservation. The country has basically enjoyed a lot of peace and stability. This brings comfort, or should bring comfort, to investors in terms of being able to, you know, be secure with their investments. We believe in the rule of law. Therefore, all contracts basically are really discharged accordingly and established through laws that we really look out to, and we really look at ensuring that everybody does not get any backlash from the, you know, contracts that we've entered into with the investors in the tourism sector. You know, the environmental conservation policies that we have, we've got, you know, the tourism policy that talks to product diversification, that talks to citizen participation, that talks to conservation, that talks to, you know, improvement in products that we have, digitization, and so on and so forth. We have conservation policies that talk to ecotourism. How do we involve the communities in the tourism industry? How we get them on board to preserve the environment that we are basically leveraging on as tourism, to ensure beneficiation, to ensure that they understand what it is when we talk about tourism and the benefits that it can bring to the communities. The communities that are living within those areas that we predominantly have our pristine tourism activities in, traditionally they lived off, their livelihoods was from agriculture. But in those areas, with the wildlife in the area, it's a challenge to now practice your traditional way of livelihoods, which is agriculture. Therefore, bring them into tourism. So ecotourism basically talks to bringing them on board, ensuring that the investors and the tourism operators appreciate the communities within those areas, source for material from the communities within those areas, source for employment within those areas, and to ensure that now the citizenry and the communities within those areas appreciate and understand what tourism can do for the country.
So that, in a sense, is your biggest challenge. We talked about human capital earlier on quite a lot, with Edmund Bartlett here was talking about this. I mean, you have several advantages again going, don't you? Because I think you still have free healthcare and free education. Is that true? Yeah.
That is correct.
Yeah, that's a major advantage for you. But what you're saying is that with an economy that, apart from mining, was very much dependent around agriculture, you are now wanting people to come from that world into the world of tourism. You want them to be retrained. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, actually, currently tourism is now probably the second, well, before COVID, moved up into the second income generation for Botswana, next to mining.
Right.
So it shows that already tourism is got a major impact in terms of the economy, and already we've got quite a number of citizens that have come into the tourism sector. But what we need to do, of course, is the improvement of service. To be able to ensure that the service levels are also at par with what the international visitors will be expecting, but as well as creating or upskilling our citizen investors in terms of now getting into bigger investments in the tourism sector, luxurious lodges, bigger hotels, and so on. Because currently, you'll find that most of us citizens are more towards the lower scale, the guest houses, the mobile operations, and so on. But we want to see Botswana and the citizenry now upgrading to these bigger investments. And how we do that? Partner with international investors who are already in the tourism sector that can then assist the government in terms of building the skills that are required for the investors of tomorrow.
Tava, thank you so much indeed. Because of time restrictions, we have to stop now. I'll just say one thing, which it strikes me that Botswana is in a very good place right now to take tourism to its next level. It has big ambitions, and I think everyone here is going to be very excited to see what happens with your particular part of the world. So best of luck. Thank you, Tafa.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cuthbert. We have to stop. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you very much. Thanks very